All right, this is our diversity project part 3. Our team members are Hannah Porter, Hannah Barlow, Audrey Reinhardt, Amy Bollinger, and Erin Sibbett. So the reasons that we chose the solution we did in part 2 was because we really didn't want to single out Emmanuel. We wanted to do something that would take the attention off of him and focus on everybody else instead. And the teacher also was supposed to draw attention to herself and kind of explain a personal story that would explain and show the class that she had things that made her different as well. And this was meant to not embarrass anybody and just make sure that everyone knew that differences were good and that they made us normal and that they help us to be unique and that it's not strange or odd for us to be different, but it's good. And there weren't many changes that needed to really take place during the lesson, but the teacher did teach the students about how differences should be celebrated and not hidden or ashamed of. And so the students were able to talk about their different cultures and their traditions and have a discussion about that. And the teacher would have the students talk about how their traditions were different from other students' traditions. So it was just meant to be a discussion and to be relaxed and comfortable and safe and to not single anybody out. And so that's kind of what we were going for in our solution, was just to make sure that everybody understood why we don't single people out and why it's good for us to be different, and that even though we are all different, we're all part of one community. We found some really cool quotes from LDS.org. This one's from Joseph Smith. He said, "When we strive to be peacemakers and to respect others' differences, we can have harmony and acceptance in our communities and in our classrooms. We must believe that others can worship how they choose and not treat them different when they do things that are different than what we do. We will cultivate peace and friendship with all, mind our own business, and come off with flying colors, respected, because in respecting others, we respect ourselves." And then Article of Faith 111 teaches this same principle. "We claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our own conscience, and allow all men the same privilege, let them worship how, where, or what they may." And I really feel that this Article of Faith kind of explains all of the solutions that we came up with for our problem, that we believe that we are all meant to worship how we want to and be how we want to, and that we can be different, that it's okay to be different because we've been allowed that privilege by God. And then we have some other really cool ways to show children that diversity is a good thing. There are 8 things here. Choose classroom themes that celebrate diversity, which is definitely probably the number one thing that we really wanted to get across with our scenario. Celebrate similarities and differences with charts and artwork, which is a really good way to represent students. Have children verbally share things that make them special, which is a really good way to use cooperative learning and small groups and things like that, so that children are communicating with each other. Teach children it's okay to ask questions. Have open conversations about biases and stereotypes, which is also what we did in this scenario. Express positive interest in diverse cultures. Respect and empathize with every student. And number 8, set a good example. So doing all these things is meant to encourage unity and diversity. And I think a lot of these things are modeled, kind of like number 8 suggests. So we came up with 4 ways that we could think about this problem a little bit differently. One way was just to address the problem differently, would be just to ask the class what they respected about Emmanuel, and just to kind of make it a positive thing. The only con to that would be it might draw more attention to Emmanuel and make him feel uncomfortable, but it would give us students an opportunity to reflect a little bit more deeply on Emmanuel. Another solution is to explore different cultures and religions in a future lesson. So just to kind of look at Emmanuel's traditions later in more depth and kind of have conversations about that. The only problem with that would be that the problem wouldn't be addressed immediately, and that it would take some time for those concepts to be learned. But the pro is that they would be able to understand it clearly later. Our third idea was just to celebrate diversity, and so that would just bring more factual understanding to the different cultures and religions like Emmanuel's. The only problem with doing this is that it could make some feel excluded because their differences aren't being talked about or aren't being celebrated as more as others. So it could be sensitive for some kids. And then our last idea was just to teach students the principle of asking questions and encouraging them to do that. And this is a good idea because it helps students dive a little bit deeper into concepts, helps them think a little bit harder, use critical thinking skills. Our pro for this one was that if students ask too many questions, then it can hinder the lesson and the main idea, and it's kind of hard to stay on track and keep one idea going, and sometimes it can get a little chaotic with a bunch of different questions going on. So I think the teacher would have to be really on top of maybe have like a question jar or take one topic at a time so that all of the questions are being answered, but not taking away from the lesson or the discussions that are happening in class. The most important factors when solving this problem, we thought about a lot of things. I think the first thing and the most important thing we thought of was just being sensitive to Emmanuel's feelings, because we really felt like that was our primary concern. We also thought about the timing of the response, when we needed to address the problem, how soon we should talk to the class, and when we should talk to Emmanuel, and when we should talk to Tim. And then we also thought about the class and how they would learn the lesson of respect and acceptance of diversity, and what we would need to do in order for them to learn that. And then we also thought about communication and how the teacher really needed to be open and kind when communicating to her class, because we knew that it was important for her to be honest, but also she needed to be kind and effective because this is such a sensitive topic. And the last thing was just to have a safe environment in the classroom and to really create a sense of community and love in that atmosphere beforehand, because we really felt like when these things come up, the environment really affects the children, just the feeling that's created in the room no matter what is said. And then we had an interesting time doing this together because all of us are so different. Our team is diverse in our ages. Some of us are seniors, some of us are in our first couple years of college. We have a mom in our group. We have people from different areas. We have people from California. We've got a few from Idaho. And so all of those affected our ideas and our opinions. And we had to kind of bring those to the table and work through them and decide what would be best, because we all had different ideas of how to solve the solution, or to solve the problem and come up with a solution. So we felt like age difference was a big deal, but also just the way we were raised. Different families gave us different perspectives and different life experiences. We also felt like some of us had served missions, and so that maybe played a factor as well, the way we saw certain situations. Overall, though, we had a really good time discussing this project and figuring out what we would do if something like this were to happen, and we definitely feel like something like this will happen in our future classrooms, and we hope that this will kind of give us an idea of how to do it in the future.